This is defense attorney Kevin J. Mahoney, who's had some really insightful articles on his website about this case. So just go to his website, guys, if you want to see him. Kevin, I wanted to ask you first, and you can talk about anything, but what do you think about this defense strategy of really zeroing in on Jen McCabe?
I'm going to guess that the defense, which seems to have an unlimited budget, has been investigating her for at least the past year, 2 years. And who knows what they might have dug up on her.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend of mine who is in possession of what he believes to be some bombshell evidence disclosed to him in confidence. And he could not tell me what that bombshell evidence, what it entailed.
Mm.
But I trust this source, and he told me that if he were on the jury, he would never be able to convict Karen Reed.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? How is everybody doing? Wanted to talk to you today about what nobody is talking about. Really, and when I say nobody, really what I'm talking about is lawyers. They all know it. They all know what they're seeing here is an innocence fraud campaign done in real time. But nobody wants to call out the fraud because they don't want to see their friend, their buddy in the court. They don't know when they're going to have to go up against this guy or work with this guy. But it just seems like it's painfully obvious that what's going on here, that Karen Reed's defense is beyond ridiculous. It was started so that she would never have to go to court, create enough public pressure. And if you've been following my channel, we went through David Yannetti's website, and there are all his cases, one after another. Dismissed, 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 dismissed. And some of the worst human beings representing traffickers. I mean, just people you would not want anywhere near you, people who really shouldn't, by the description of the case, should not, you wouldn't be happy that, let's just put it that way, they wouldn't be happy that their case is getting dismissed. You would worry that maybe they're in your neighborhood. Let's put it that way. But before I really go into all this, I want to talk about last night's show. I was so excited to have on Ken Kratz because I talked about it a little bit, but Ken Kratz was actually started a kind of group of professionals at one point to talk about innocence fraud, one of them being John Collins. You can go back to my episode with John Collins called The Wrongful Conviction of Forensic Science, talking about how the wrongful conviction movement is really disparaging forensic science and really sound techniques in order to get guilty people off. And I thought that we would have a really fluid discussion about Karen Reed, and it just didn't go that way. And honestly, in the middle, my computer, I don't know if my computer felt that it was kind of going sideways, because it kind of just like turned off in the middle. And I was really hoping to get it back on track, and it never really got back on track. And I just have to apologize, because it really was not the discuss. I was really hoping for a discussion, and really about Karen Reed and innocence fraud and how similar all these innocence fraud campaigns are. But that didn't happen. And that's that. So without further ado, just to remind you about Kevin J. Mahoney's a lawyer. My understanding is he's in this area, meaning around Canton, Mass. He's watching the Karen Reed trial. He's tried cases in this courtroom. And the time before last that he was on Yellow Cottage Tales, it was a super interesting interview. You saw the clip of it in the opening where he said, "I've been told by a secret source that the defense has some explosive evidence. And once they release this evidence, I'm told no juror would convict Karen Reed." And my theory on that was either it's true that they've dug up something so amazingly exonerating that they didn't even want to bring it up in opening, which is odd, but okay, or hand it over to the prosecution or the public like they've done, or, which I think may be more likely with what we've been seeing in court, is that he was told that because he's been writing these really, I think, powerful blogs about the Karen Reed trial, showing how the defense really has no case. Like, no one can get John O'Keefe in the home. So forget everything else. Forget all the talking points on social media. I don't even, I'm not even up to date what they are right now. I just assume it's the regular, everyone's lying, every witness is lying, every witness is terrible. They're all covering up in a conspiracy that you can't even get to step one that happened. But that's not the point in innocence fraud. It doesn't have to make sense. These innocence fraud narratives rarely make sense from A to Z. They just, once they're repeated using experts, using people like ex-FBI people, ex-police officers, former detectives, they like to use people who label themselves profilers, body language experts. Once they use this kind of appeal to authority and use our very complicit media, they've convinced the whole public that if you're looking at it thinking, this doesn't feel right or seem right, then you're in the minority and you're going to either quiet down or you're going to question yourself and think that there's something valid about Karen Reed's defense. So, for example, let's look at Kevin J. Mahoney's first interview on Yellow Cottage Tales, and you can see Kevin's reaction. He was very subdued in this visit. I think whatever his friend told him, it worked. He was very gentle on the defense, very beyond even-handed. Let's take a look.
Kevin, I wanted to ask you first, and you can talk about anything, but what do you think about this defense strategy of really zeroing in on Jen McCabe?
I'm going to guess that the defense, which seems to have an unlimited budget, has been investigating her for at least the past year, 2 years. and who knows what they might have dug up on her. I would have to think that they have something on her if they're focusing so much of their attention on her. Now you would ask yourself, well, wouldn't they have to turn that over to the prosecution? But if a defense attorney hires an investigator and the investigator has something that we consider significant, we simply don't have the investigator write a report. And then we have no obligation under Rule 14 to turn anything over to the Congress. So,
and they just haven't testified. So yeah.
So they might be holding something back.
That's interesting. Now this is a case though where they have leaked everything they can through a PR campaign that was extremely organized. So you would think if they had something like that, they'd probably leak it. But yeah, you could be right.
They seem to have been very strategic in what they've leaked. And I have a friend of mine who is in possession of what he believes to be some bombshell evidence disclosed to him in confidence. And he could not tell me what that bombshell evidence, what it entailed. But I trust this source. And he told me that if he were on the jury, he would never be able to convict Karen Reed.
Based on this bombshell evidence.
Based on this evidence. So I don't know if that evidence has been disclosed. I don't even know if that evidence exists. But I trust the source.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it hasn't been disclosed. I mean, we've seen all the evidence. I don't consider anything that's been leaked out or publicly put out in the documents or in the hearings and the motions as bombshell that shows a conspiracy.
So look how careful he is choosing his words. He's very almost physically kind of pulled back from the screen a little bit, and just really choosing his words carefully. And you'll see the subject of David Yannetti comes up, and he's very gentle on David Yannetti. And just as a reminder, this is a campaign that started using a blogger, harassing, booing the victims' families, showing up on witnesses' lawns. So much so that Aidan Kearney's got 2 charges for witness intimidation. And where are the lawyers saying anything that this is unacceptable? And this is so beyond the rules of code and conduct for lawyers. It's an absolute violation, but nothing ever happens because you go up in front of other lawyers. No lawyer will ever criticize really deeply other lawyers and call out this fraud for what it is, even as it's eroding our justice system.
And then as far as like the strategy of cross-examining her, she's not someone who is used to being on the stand like some of the officers in this case. So if you're going to cross-examine a witness, what you want to really start with is your most important, most damaging cross-examination material, and you want to hit her with that right in the beginning. Now, if they have something on her that they have not yet disclosed, that's what they should start with, and really rattle her. That's what I would anticipate they're going to do.
And so they'll do it on cross. So after the prosecution calls them, they'll hit her right away with that cross-examination questions and evidence that they have on her.
That would be a sound strategy, because once a witness loses her equilibrium, the rest of the testimony, cross-examination, they're rattled. They don't perform well.
I mean, this gives me chills. So once we just rattle them, they don't perform well, even if they're telling the truth. So it's not the point of cross-examination isn't to get to the truth. It's just all I have to do is rattle them, and nobody, they don't do well after that. Nobody thinks that they're trustworthy out of it after that. This is why people don't like lawyers. This kind of really, how do I say it? Low life tactics, low life lawyering tactics.
Now, if they don't have that kind of bombshell evidence, what do you think about this strategy? So just going on the evidence that they do currently have, which is they have their forensic data guy says that she made this search at 2:27 a.m. And that's really the only piece of evidence against Jen McCabe. It's going to be disputed by really good experts on the other side, but at this point it's up in the air and they have to convince the jury. So when she gets up there and sits in front of those jurors for hours or days, is there a chance that this backfires on the defense because they're trying to turn her into an arch villain?
Yes. I don't quite understand what their strategy is unless they're in possession of something more material that they have not disclosed. From what I understand, and just so your audience understands this, Kevin Reddington is a friend of mine, and he has told me unequivocally that
He understands their strategy. He understands what their strategy is. He understands it totally. It's just a stomach-turning, immoral, and unethical behavior. He fully understands what they're doing. I guess what he's saying is he wouldn't do it himself, maybe. He wouldn't go this far. He wouldn't get this, what I perceive as immoral and unethical. Going through people's face, hiring private investigators and, finding 50-year-old, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm talking about, 50-year-old photos, playing a kind of 6 degrees of separation defense, harassment, haranguing, putting out total disinformation in the public sphere to make Karen Reed look like a victim and totally obscuring John O'Keefe altogether and his family, and also re-traumatizing John O'Keefe's family because they know the facts of the case and they are formidable opponents to Karen Reed's innocence campaign. So get them so traumatized, get all the witnesses with really powerful testimony against Karen Reed, so traumatized, living in such fear that they can't speak. And by the time they get up on the stand, they'll be so rattled and so afraid that the whole case will crumble if it goes to trial. That was the plan. So for those of you wondering why I'm not on board with this, I'm not on board with evil. Sorry.
a really nice person, a really, really genuinely nice person, and that this has affected her family, obviously, in a very tough way. He would never lie to me. So if he tells me that she's a really
not in a traumatizing way or a re-traumatizing way, not in an awful injuring way, just in a tough way. It was just tough. It's like when a doctor tells you you're going to experience some discomfort. Yeah, the family's experienced some discomfort. Agonizing years at the hands of a deranged and disordered mob.
nice person and absolutely, positively innocent of all these allegations. I believe him. And I know that he's a top attorney. He's an incredibly gifted trial attorney. And I'm guessing that he's probably spent some time trying to get her ready for what they might spring on her.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's just in order for her to be presented as, in order for her to play her part in this conspiracy theory that they're doing, she has to have known when they sent her home that John was still clinging to life inside the house and that the plan was to put him out on the lawn alive. And to me, that strikes me as kind of an absurd theory. But even just if that is the theory, what kind of person would Jen McCabe have to be to do that? And her health app data shows that her heartbeat did not go up at all at home. Her heartbeat remained normal.
They are basically trying to portray her as the Cersei Lannister of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
When she's a suburban mother. And then the other question is, who is actually going to conduct the cross-examination? Is it going to be Alan Jackson or is it going to be David Yannetti? I think David Yannetti comes across better in front of a jury. I think that he comes across as a far more genuine person.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that if he's going to do this, to minimize the risk to his client, I think that he has to go about this in a manner that is not hyper aggressive. I think he's gonna. I think he can ask really tough questions, but he should do so in at least a courteous manner, because that's going to get you further with the jury than just being hard.
So while you're just trying to destroy the suburban moms, someone's mom's credibility, you should do it in a courteous manner. It's just funny. This is just why people don't like lawyers, for this kind of stuff.
And analytical and theatrical. That's my opinion. What are they going to use against her? I'm guessing that they've had an investigator tailing her. Apparently she's developed some sort of relationship with the Proctor family.
Yes.
I'm guessing they're going to bring that up in cross-examination.
Mm-hmm.
And what else they have on her, I'm really not sure. I think that the fact that in today's...
See, isn't that clever of them? So they harassed these people so much that they looked for people who could understand their situation, this kind of life of fear that this mob had imposed. And then they're all talking, and then now the defense can say, see, they're all in the conspiracy. They're all in cahoots. They're all talking. It's diabolical. It's diabolical. It's what this is.
Hearing.
And here's this lawyer just like discussing it like, I prefer white bread rather than whole wheat. It's like he's deciding like what he might order for lunch while he's describing one of the most diabolical, soulless, immoral campaigns that it's ever been. And even Kevin, who's read his blogs, is like, who am I interviewing here? And for all those who are like, oh, you're reading into this, you don't know what you're talking about. I've had this. I've had on people who've written really strong things, and then I get them on my channel, and it's like it's like they're a different person. You're like, excuse me, I booked Kevin J. Mahoney. Is this Kevin K. Mahoney? Like, did I just get in touch with the wrong person here? Who am I talking to? So you can see Kevin is kind of confused. Why is he being so differential to the defense? Why is he being so soft on a defense team that has totally violated the ethical obligations and the code of conduct, in my opinion, of their profession?
We had Timothy Natale. Is that how do you pronounce his name?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that she said, I hit him. And so it's not inconsistent with what Miss McCabe's heard Miss Reed say to her on the drive over.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same theme. So if you can't discredit the paramedic, it's going to be more difficult.
Not inconsistent. You mean that every single one of these witnesses who said that they heard Karen Reed say some version of I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. This is my fault. Basically taking responsibility. There's like a billion, he's dead, a snowplow hit him, all those kind of things. All of those people are, I love how he says that they're not inconsistent. You mean they're consistent. All these witnesses are consistent. You can't destroy all these witnesses.
To discredit Miss McCabe.
Yeah, we're going to see it.
Paramedic was terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see more paramedics say the same thing. I think there's going to be a total of 5 that are going to say they heard the same thing. And I'm not sure how many of the other police. And Kerry Roberts is going to be a powerful witness too. Kerry was not close or really friends with Jen McCabe at that time. I'm not even sure if they had met with each other until that morning. So she's not, if there's a conspiracy, she's not part of it. She doesn't know the Alberts. She's not connected to any of this. She was a friend of John's from Braintree. But she did move to Canton. But the commonality is that she had played a big role in helping John raise the nieces after they were orphaned by the parents. So Kerry was kind of similar to Jen McCabe in that way, but they were kind of each separately doing it. And Karen called Kerry that morning. And first she called and said, John's dead. And then she hung up. That was a little after 5 a.m. And then she called right back. And then obviously we learned today for the first time that at the crime scene, after they took John, Kerry Roberts took Karen away in the phone. But then the police called and they decided to section 12 her, so they made Kerry bring her back. So Kerry spent a lot of time alone with Karen. So there's going to be some interesting testimony there.
Yes, I cannot imagine what Karen Reed might have said to her in that car. That'll be fascinating to hear. The rumor around the courthouse, the Dedham courthouse, is that the DA believes the case is absolutely rock solid. And not everything. Now, you're a defense attorney and you're hoping through Rule 14, the obligations imposed on the Commonwealth, you're going to get all the evidence.
Right.
But you never get all the evidence. Because the witnesses are going to testify to statements, etc., that maybe were never disclosed.
And what about the federal aspect of this? That must be something that just, as an attorney, just fascinates you. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on with the feds, how they get involved in this, what they're up to, even the strange kind of threat they made against the judge to take this over? A lot of weird stuff there, right?
I know David Yannetti. I do not know him that well. We were assistant TAs together, I don't know, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into him at the Charlestown District Court about a year ago. And at that point, I knew nothing about Karen Reed. I hadn't even heard about the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that based on that conversation, I believe that he believed, at least at that time, that his client was innocent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to disclose any more. Not that he told me this in confidence, but I wouldn't feel right about revealing any of the contents of that conversation. But I can just say that I was convinced at that moment that he absolutely believed his client to be innocent.
So he was...
Well, we know that's not true because David Yannetti came out and said it was a tragic accident. That's what he announced to everybody. It's on record. He said it's a tragic accident. My client had a tragic accident. Now he's saying she had no part in it and she's a victim of a giant conspiracy. So we know that's to be not true. We know that David Yannetti does not believe his own defense. And I mean, I don't know if we're getting into linguistics here, that she's what it would, like her father says, factually, no, that wouldn't be factually innocent, by some sort of legal technicality innocent, but that is not what it sounds like Mr. Mahoney is talking about here. Sounds like he's talking about he has some real belief in innocence. And we know that's not true. We know that's not true. So where did this interview come from? It's so odd. It's such a mystery to me in this case. And strangely, one of the things that fascinates me about the Karen Read case is, where did this interview come from? How did a lawyer writing blog after blog on Karen Read's guilt give this interview? Who knows the way lawyers work? Who knows that? I will guarantee you he knows the innocence fraud grift. And rightfully, it usually doesn't take place till after a conviction. But we're watching an innocence fraud campaign in real time, started way before. So they had they wanted this thrown out before it ever went to trial, or to just poison the jury pool and get one juror who knew about, who had been propagandized and brainwashed by it. He knows that this is a perversion of our justice system. Why doesn't he care? Why isn't he brave enough to speak out? Why is he only willing to talk about guilt and innocence? Why is he only willing to talk about it from that perspective? And his colleagues, and we'll get into it. It gets more interesting as we go on, because his new interview is pretty interesting. Thomas Fleming says, please hit the like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. I'm such a poor promoter. Thanks, Thomas. Good. I can't help myself from posting that. I'm going to need therapy when this case is done. Yeah. It's a tough case. It's so dark. And, what's in my brain is Karen Read from, what was it, Thursday? Was it Thursday or Friday? I can't remember now. Thought they were off Friday. But no, maybe they were on Friday because they're off. They were off Monday, I thought. I don't know. Yeah, it was Friday. Thank you. I'm thinking to myself. Friday, when Jen McCabe was weeping and the camera panned to Karen Read, and her face, if someone told me that she was an extra on a movie about vampires, I would totally believe it. She looked like a soulless vampire, just absolutely staring straight ahead with, some people talk about these antisocial personalities, or what's known as psychopaths, having these kind of really piercing stares, just staring ahead straight, no feeling. Remember, this is just a reminder. John O'Keefe was Karen Read's boyfriend for 2 years. And I want to talk about what that relationship must have been like, and how she probably, she always says John O'Keefe got in touch with her and said, hey, blast from the past. But how much do you want to bet it was the other way around? And that Karen Read, it's what's called hoovering, was looking for narcissistic supply and got in touch with him. And what a nightmare it must have been for John O'Keefe. I mean, if this was, this is something Boundless Millennial talks about. If Karen Read were a man on trial who had run over his girlfriend after an argument, how much would the public be willing to buy the free Karen Read movement? Or if Karen Read were a more unattractive woman and a more menacing physically woman, not so slight, would the public still be on board the free Karen Read movement? Let me know what you think in the comments.
His belief in that was that the basis for the feds investigating. He was convincing enough to walk into their office and get Josh Levy to go to take this on.
I'm not. He never revealed any of that to me. I would feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
revealing the contents of the conversation, other than to say, like I said, he came across as 100% convinced his client was innocent and being framed.
Mm. No, that's fascinating. I just, even if it's just strange to me that this federal involvement here, and I wonder what. It's going back to I don't know how close you followed this, but there's a private investigator named Brian Scanlon or Steve Scanlon, and Scanlon showed up at Yanetti's office, and Yannetti had the private investigator there that they had working for them, and the story went out that Scanlon had supposedly heard about something that went on inside the house, but that turned out to be false. He has since testified that no, he had no information. But it was in David Yannetti's office that he heard about, for instance, the possibility of Colin being a suspect and being in the house. In fact, it wasn't until he arrived at Yannetti's house that he learned that this involved the Brian Albert, who was an older friend of Scanlon's, or an acquaintance, a strong acquaintance anyways. So I don't know. And Yannetti, I've spoken to Gretchen Voss, the reporter for Boston Magazine, and she said she found Yannetti suspicious. She found that Yannetti changed his story multiple times with her. I don't know if you have any reaction to any of that, but I know I don't want to get you in trouble with your friends.
In this business, you kind of learn about the other defense attorneys and some of the things they get involved in and some of the things they stay away from. And it's always been my impression that David Yannetti is a good guy, that he's an above board guy.
Okay, what above board guy is starts a campaign that harasses the victim's family and intimidates witnesses? What above board guy does that? What good guy does that? I mean, unless you're arguing that he was a good guy and somehow he made a wrong turn. But I don't believe that. No one with any kind of morality gets aboard a campaign and says, yeah, let's get this blogger involved. Let's harass witnesses. Let's create a campaign of terror. Let's re-victimize the victim's family. Why are all these lawyers so silent about it? Why aren't they speaking out? I know why the YouTubers aren't speaking out. I know why they're getting aborted. I mean, I know people are saying, I don't understand why so many people are buying this conspiracy theory. They're not buying it, they're selling it. And of course there's a few people who are conned and groomed by it, but most people who think it's okay to harass victims' families, harass witnesses, put out false information in the public sphere, create a campaign of terror, all to get someone accused of second-degree murder or acquitted. That's who they're all rallying around. I understand everyone deserves a vigorous kind of defense, but go back to my interview with David McKenzie. Maybe I need to pull it back up. He's a defense attorney, and he represented Julius Jones, a death row case in Oklahoma. Kim Kardashian's one of her pet killers. And he was shocked. He says, as lawyers, you can't lie, cheat, and steal. Those were his words. Anyone lying, cheating, stealing. That's how he put it. For an accused killer or a convicted killer, you have to wonder about their moral compass at the very least.
Now, with regard to this particular defense, I don't quite understand what he's doing.
So you find it unexpected, to say the least.
I would.
Once again, he's confused. He doesn't understand. You get it. You understand. I think you do understand, Kevin J. Mahoney. I think you do understand. I think this is some feigned confusion here because you're not brave enough to really come out and tell it like it is.
Say unexpected, it would be the correct word. I would not have anticipated that he might have been involved with somebody named Turtle Boy. That's simply not the way that I've ever seen him conduct himself. I've always had the highest regard for David Yannetti. I've always thought he's a really good attorney. On the occasions when I have talked to him, I've always enjoyed it. I've always thought he's a great guy, and most of the defense bar loves him.
So let's talk about that, using this social.
Right. So the defense bar loves him. See, I'm not going to really call out this guy that's really popular with my colleagues. I'm not going to do that. But let's just remind people, hold on one second. Does anybody remind this upstanding? Let's just take a little bit of a break. Let me see where we are here. 1436. In case I get lost. Hold on one second. Let's remind everybody about this upstanding member of the bar. Anybody remember this? Anybody see it? Should I go back? Watch David Yannetti's hand. There's Turtle Boy on the left, okay? Well, actually, let me make this big so everybody can see it. So here's Karen Reed. Here's Alan Jackson. There's David Yannetti. Turtle Boy's to the left of the screen. The camera. See his hand? So, okay, I know the turtle people, the free Karen readers will say, oh, he touched his leg, but he's clearly going for his behind here. Just a little, you're doing a good job. Is that someone who disapproves of harassing victims' families and booing them and harassing witnesses and terrorizing, digging up dirt, calling into question every single witness with damaging information on Karen Reed? Does this look like disapproval to you? Does this look like stand-up, someone who's a stand-up guy? Okay, one more time. Should we watch it one more time for those in the... Okay.
Yeah, as a campaign. Talk about that first from the ethical side of that, and then also from the effectiveness side of it, creating this whole mob that they've created over the last year.
I've never seen a defense attorney incorporate social media into a strategy as it's been done here.
This isn't incorporating social media. This isn't incorporating social media. Incorporating social media, that sounds almost inventive, doesn't it? This campaign, it just incorporates social media. That's what it does, guys. It incorporates social media. It's not a re-victimize the victim's family campaign. It's not a harass the witnesses campaign. It's not call every single witness with damaging information on Karen Reed a liar and a conspirator and a killer. No, that's not the kind of campaign we're talking about here. It's not a create social pressure. See, innocence fraud campaigns are all about creating social pressure and kind of creating hold on, I have to really think of the perfect word here. a consensus, a public consensus that puts pressure on our legal system from without. We like to think of our legal system that it works in a bubble. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And so politicians want to get on board because it's always popular to free someone, because it's seen as a positive act, no matter who it hurts or how unjust it is. And that's why the wrongful conviction movement is always there when the convict gets out of on the courthouse steps, gets released from prison. They're always there, either at the prison or the courthouse steps, getting released, and always with a mob full of people, fans, to make it look like everyone's joyous about this. See Adnan Syed, see Anthony Porter. I mean, there's so many of them. It's amazing how powerful and rich this movement is. And so in this case, they're using all these tactics, pre-trial, during trial. And it's very scary because I don't really believe, I feel, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but I worry that the judge has not protected the jury or well enough, and really protected this case from this innocence campaign properly. And if we get a wonky, wacky verdict, we'll know why. I hope we won't. I hope we'll get a just verdict, because try this case without this campaign in any other state. I mean, I understand why Lolly thinks that this is a slam dunk case, and kudos to Lolly. I mean, this guy is prosecuting this case. Looks like he's a one-man show. I know he does have help, but he's doing all the cross-examinations. He knows this case inside and out. And if you heard my interview, one of the more interesting parts of the interview with Ken Kratz yesterday is when I asked him, there has been criticism that he's trying the case while simultaneously debunking the defense case, doing two things at once in his prosecution. And other people have suggested that he should just try his case and then put on rebuttal witnesses. And Ken Kratz, a former prosecutor, said absolutely not. And I added, if this has taught us anything, once someone believes something or thinks something is true, it's very hard to dissuade them. It's not true. And he said, you're gutting, what Lally is doing is gutting the defense's case before they even have a chance to put it on. And he thought it was an excellent strategy. So take that as another person's opinion who's actually a lawyer.
Using bloggers and
I'm sorry.
Other
I don't think he is a lawyer anymore, but was a lawyer. He's not practicing anymore.
Individuals to get the message out. I am not sure that this is a winning strategy. I mean, I've been to the Dedham court a couple of times in the last few weeks. I've seen the supporters. Some of them are very aggressive. They'll come into the roadway and they wave their signs, and they'll scream, that Karen Reed is being framed and that she's innocent. Now, if I was a juror, how would I feel about that? How would I feel about having to endure that kind of treatment or that kind of pressure each time I go into court, where I know that I'm hearing the actual evidence that these folks have not heard, and that I've got a real responsibility to make an informed and honest decision. So I don't know if that's a good strategy. I don't know pressuring jurors. And from what I've heard around the courthouse, jurors have been followed, and or at least prospective jurors have been followed, and people, Karen Reed supporters, try to talk to them. And I would think that that would backfire.
So let me ask just one last question. I mean, there's a million I could ask, and people have questions in chat, but unfortunately,
That's interesting that he thinks it would backfire. That's a certain type of person. But you're picked for a jury because you are malleable. Your opinion is malleable. It depends how you're approached, I would think, and what points, how persuasive the person is, even though it's totally illegal.
I do have to.
And who is gonna? And speaking of, who in Massachusetts is gonna pull back the reins on this stuff? Because these innocence campaigns create so much money, and really they're like crack for the American public. They just can't get enough of them. A salacious story, and someone robbed of their freedom, or possibly going to be robbed of their freedom. People can't. It's too intoxicating for the American public.
Take off to go to the court TV thing. But if some of the things that they've done risk antagonizing the judge and other aspects of the court, how much of a disadvantage could this be in the trial? Does it matter?
I believe Judge Coney is going to make the decisions that she needs to make, and I think she's going to be. I think she's going to try to be very fair, but there's a lot of judgment calls.
So what I want you to do is notice the difference in demeanor in this interview and the interview we're going to watch coming up from last night. So here, Yanetti's great. Everything's great. I'm just confused. Don't know. It's going to get interesting.
That could go one way or the other way.
Right.
And one of the reasons why you never want to alienate a judge is you don't want her making all those calls in favor of the prosecutor.
Right. Just like an umpire in baseball, those close calls.
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I wish you good luck tonight on the show, and I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job. You always do a great job of explaining the case.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and I hope you'll come back again. It was really good to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah.
But what are the boundaries here? Not only legal, but what are the ethical boundaries here? So I think, for instance, of David Yannetti taking a 20-year-old kid like Allie McCabe.
Okay. Did everybody miss out? Now we're on last night's interview. Want to make sure everybody's with me. Is everybody with me? We're on last night's interview. I don't know if everybody saw the box turn here. I think he's almost wearing the same shirt. It almost looks like the same interview, doesn't it? I assure you it's different. It's last night's. So take a listen.
Who's done nothing wrong and who's just testifying honestly in a trial, something that all she did was pick up Colin and bring him home. And he's up there making it seem like suggesting that those texts were manufactured and misreading intentionally. He knows that Lifetime 360 data shows that she went home, that she dropped Colin off and went home. But he's misreading it to the jury because that data was unconnected. Her device was unconnected to the Wi-Fi at home. So it's reaching out for a signal, and the cell tower was on top of the high school. David Yannetti knows that. But he knew he could exploit it. And here you go. You're smearing this girl where half her friends and neighbors now think that she's part of a cover-up. I don't know. What are the ethical boundaries here, Kevin?
Well, there's the ethical obligation to represent your client zealously.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a situation where I have something on a defendant, or I have something on a witness that I can use to discredit that witness, I have to do it. I don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to misrepresent something? No, I'm not going to do that. Am I going to torture somebody who's telling the truth? No, I'm not going to do that. Am I going to work with a blogger and social media to crucify people who are going to be coming in to testify? No, I'm not going to do that. To be honest with you, and I've known David for 30 years. I don't know him that well. I see him in court here, there. I've always liked David Yannetti. I find what he's participating in here to be incomprehensible. I think what the defense.
So once again, it's incomprehensible. So that's as strong as he's going to go. He's not going to quite say, now he doesn't know him quite well. He still likes him. He's not going to say everyone loves him anymore. It's like, he's toned down the praise for David Yannetti. Now, once again, he can't understand it. And instead of incorporating social media, they're now working with a blogger, right? Did you hear all that? And he understands. Now he's going to talk about the campaign. This is now not just, he's recognizing it. Now he's going to be a little bit more forthcoming and recognize that this is an entire campaign and not quite say what it really is, which is a campaign of terror. What are these lawyers so afraid of? I mean, if David Yannetti and Alan Jackson have taught us anything, I guess they're afraid of being social pariahs. I don't know, amongst their lawyer friends. Is that they're all a bond that nobody calls out bad behavior? But certainly David Yannetti and Alan Jackson, no punishment for them. Pat Brooks, love your channel and appreciate having someone who is not biased, but truly cares about the truth and justice for the victim and his family. The defense has tried to turn this trial into a vicious circus, in my opinion. I don't think that's just your opinion, Pat. I think that's fact. I think you have quite a bit of evidence to show there that they've tried to. You have Turtle Boy on can I say video? What is it? I guess it's video, saying, yeah, that's what we want. We want to poison the jury pool. You have him with a bullhorn saying, see, I can't remember if he's saying Morrissey or Lally, but we are going to get to your jury pool at a demonstration. We're going to get to every single one of them. So you have no jury pool. Just openly, they're not hidden about what their agenda was. They put in a motion to dismiss before this trial. They didn't want this to go to trial. They fought it all the way. But thank you for your kind words, Pat. It means a lot. And thank you for your super chat.
Maybe at the direction of Karen Reed, I think what they've done together with the social media bloggers is it's disgraceful. It's disturbing. I don't know any defense attorneys who condone it.
Is it effective?
He doesn't know any attorneys who condone it. Did everybody hear that? For those in the back, he doesn't know one attorney in his area who condones this. And yet he's the only one, he's the only one talking out in the mildest way possible. Because really these blogs are really about Karen Reed's guilt, and sort of like this defense is ill-advised, meaning it's not going to work. It looks bad. But what I'm asking once again, Who is going to call out this fraud for corrupting our justice system, for being immoral, for being wrong, for being evil, for re-traumatizing the victim's family, for harassing witnesses, for these people, once it's like being hunted. They're never going to be the same again. And some of them, their ability to trust another human being is gone forever. So Karen Reed, in my opinion, is not just on trial for second-degree murder, or should be on trial not just for second-degree murder, but who is going to take accountability for the damage? And once this campaign is done, the free Karen readers will jump on another campaign or another quote unquote wrongfully convicted or wrongfully accused person. They love the excitement. For disordered people, they love the excitement. They love the cruelty of it. They relate to these antisocial personalities. Some of them have people, convicts in their family. Can't get enough of it. But I was shocked. Thanks, Florida Golf Girl, for gifting 20 memberships. My understanding is that they'll be handed out at random. But they're just going to go to another campaign. Who's calling it out? Everyone knows that this is wrong. No one's going to speak up. No one has the balls to speak up. Really? Really?
I think, if you want me to be honest, I think that the defense is hemorrhaging credibility. I think attacking these people who look like decent people, attacking them, I think is going to backfire. And then the other thing that I'm mystified by, if there is a conspiracy and John O'Keefe was killed in the house, that's what they're contending, then every single person has to be a participant in that conspiracy and that cover-up. There could be nobody who is in the house or lives in the house that is not aware of the conspiracy and therefore a participant, either willingly or unwillingly.
Mm-hmm.
Yet,
so now I'm confused. So now is he just saying this is a bad legal strategy and he's trying to help out the defense and telling them that this isn't going to go well for them and they're going to lose? Is he just trying to be helpful to the defense? And showing, and we all know anyone with a brain can see that the conspiracy is illogical. The conspiracy, I say the conspiracy as if it's one conspiracy or one story that you can tell from beginning to end. It's all over the place. These people can't show you how it happened. And when you call them out on that, they go, well, it's not my job to prove who killed John O'Keefe, just not Karen Reed. It's the anyone but Karen Reed story, just not her. They're happy to go from person to person to person. This is not unusual. West Memphis 3 went from one grieving stepfather to the next. Adnan Syed, same thing. Jay did it. The boyfriend did it. No one blinks an eye. No one says, hey, what happened to the other guy? He was the devil yesterday. He was the real killer yesterday. No one says anything. Everyone goes on like as if we have two sides and they're both as reasonable and we're going to hash it out. Not we have the truth or closest that we can come to the truth, having not been there, with the evidence that we have and we've recovered. And then we have a totally made up, shifting, fantastical, salacious story. And I kind of like sit back and looking at these people going, why can't these people just get logical and rational? Why can't these free Karen readers figure it out? Why are they lacking critical thinking skills? No. Either they've been brainwashed and groomed into it, or they really just love being on a vicious, exciting, cruel team. It makes them feel powerful. You know, and there's also that element that, you ever read the Shirley Jackson's The Lottery? It's a short story about how in a town, one person is chosen to be stoned to death every year. It's like, in this, it's like, well, at least I'm not the person who's chosen, right? At least I'm not the subject of this campaign's. I'm not in the crosshair of this campaign this time. At least it's not me, but it sure feels good to throw the stones. Sure feels good to be part of it. Sure makes me feel powerful. And then I also have the blanket of I can say I'm a justice crusader. And I'm crusading against something corrupt when I'm taking part in a huge injustice. And I'm against corrupt cops and false accusations while I can do all the false accusations I want.
They bring in Attorney Little to do two of the cross-examinations, Mrs. Albert and then Albert Jr.
Yeah.
The cross-examinations, I'm sure she worked very hard on these cross-examinations. I'm sure she's a bright person. But Alan Jackson at least had to know that she's not a very good cross-examiner. Mm-hmm. Those cross-examinations, I mean, they again, I don't like to criticize her because I'm sure she worked very hard on it, but those cross-examinations were awful. And you have to wonder why they would entrust two.
That's in his blog. He calls, I think he says they bring up Elizabeth Little's, meaning Alan Jackson and David Unetti. I'm paraphrasing his Mahoney's blog. They bring her from the bullpen with, kind of to pinch hit in these cross-examinations, and they're terrible. But what he's forgetting, or maybe, is that Elizabeth Little is a partner in Jackson's law firm. So I would think to become a partner that you would have to have experience in cross-examination. I get that not every lawyer is equally as good at everything. Some lawyers are great at cross-examinations and direct examinations. For example, I always love to mention him, Deputy DA John Luanne. Hope shout out to anyone watching the Jings Part 2. I have 4 episodes I've done with him. The king of the cold cases. He's great at direct examinations. Not as good at opening or closing statements. Not terrible at it, but that's not his specialty. He really shines in direct examinations and cross examinations. Thanks, Carol Jones. Elizabeth Little, they had, I would think, to be a partner, that they had some idea of her ability in cross-examination. And he described it as letting these witnesses walk. So a baseball analogy, that Elizabeth Little's just like letting these witnesses walk when she cross-examined. So.
Critical witnesses, 2 alleged conspirators. to someone who did not have the courtroom skills to expose them or unmask them as the conspirators? Why would you give those two critical witnesses a walk? Why would you bring her in and let these people just sort of slide off the witness stand unscathed? I don't understand what they're doing.
Do you think that was the plan all along, or were they going to the bullpen, adjusting to what they were seeing in the jury's eyes and their reactions?
So is he more bewildered because he thinks that this isn't an effective defense? That's what I hear, that this isn't an effective defense. Why didn't Jackson or Yannetti do why didn't they take the cross and were more effective? Because this third party culprit thing is nonsense, and they can't prove it no matter what experienced lawyer they have going. Mahoney. So he goes, everyone's bewildered by it. So is everyone bewildered because they just don't think it's effective? Certainly is effective to get let's talk about our lazy media. We have these free Karen Reed members being presented as experts in propaganda. The minister of propaganda for free Karen Reed on Court TV being presented to the public as experts. Boy, they can repeat like a parrot the free Karen Reed talking points. Just wind them up. I mean, what's going on? And our media is all jumping in. All jumping in on it. No one's saying this is wrong. Because it's good for clicks and views for them. And also because there's an ideology that the real criminal is our system, that we're indoctrinating our youth in all the time, all our universities, that there's something inherently unfair, sexist, racist, classes. It's right. Rich people do have an advantage in every part of our system. Legal system is no different, but we're indoctrinating people, young people into this in our universities. Almost every single one of them, a lot of them have an innocence clinic. The Medieval Innocence Project is still going on, even after they framed an innocent man, All Story Simon, in order to get a guilty one, Anthony Porter, out. The school still continues on. You would think that kind of damage, framing someone, having him spend time in prison because students were so brainwashed by their professor and did such a poor job were investigating innocence. Kitty's 1993 says, refreshing on Stephen Avery. I really think police conspiracy strategy is straight from that playbook. Millions of viewers of Making a Murderer, public willing to believe such nonsense. Yeah, because they did a really good job. They edited footage. They edited interrogations. They edited footage of witness testimony of law enforcement officer in that case. They made a blood vial make it look like it's planted when it was just normal. That's exactly how blood vials are. And they hid Stephen Avery's history and made him. And they were like, oh, well, his cat killing, that was just the follies of youth. I watched that. I was out when I didn't know what Making Murderer was about. But the Making a Murderer filmmakers, Maura Demas and Laura Riccardi, were considered part of the defense team. They arrived quickly after reading about how Stephen Avery, who was falsely convicted, quote unquote, and go back to last night's episode to learn all about that, how sus that false conviction is, and how Avery confessed in prison that it was really an attempted kidnapping and an essay of Penny Bernstein. How they use that hair and how sus it was, that they had read in the paper that someone who had been wrongfully convicted had committed another crime. So they were there to not only exonerate Steve and Avery, but to exonerate the movement. Because once someone reoffends, you have to think, who was quote unquote exonerated, you have to think that maybe they got it right the first time. Thanks, kiddies.
Again, it's always hard to read what the jurors are thinking. Some of them will give you something, but most of them give you nothing. So I don't know that was a real consideration. I'm guessing that they divided up the tasks. I'm guessing that Yannetti did not know that Little was not a very talented cross-examiner. And, it was maybe too late once the cross-examinations began. And maybe he realized what a mistake it's been to include her. But I also think it's a bad look for any defendant to have 3 attorneys, even 2 attorneys. I want the jury to perceive me and my client as the underdogs, surrounded by prosecutors and law enforcement.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
I don't want my legal team to be so big that the prosecutor looks like the underdog.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about that. And obviously you want to build that connection, that almost like a bond between you and the jurors, where they expect to see you every day and they trust you. But that's harder to do if you're getting 3 different people doing the crosses, right?
Three different people doing the crosses. Like, so when Little gets up to do her cross-examination of Mrs. McCabe, nobody's heard a peep out of her. None of the jurors have heard a peep out of her before then.
Yeah.
And
I thought that was really interesting. So he's saying there's too many defense attorneys. You want to look like the underdog as a defense attorney, something I never thought of. Lally certainly looks like the underdog. He's one guy doing everything, and then they have 3 defense attorneys. So certainly if that theory is working, or certainly if that theory is right, is a better way to put it. Mahoney's theory is right, that you want to look like the underdog in numbers. I remember when I was watching both the Nexium trial and Larry Ray's trial, the defense was enormous. Went back rows. And there were so many Nexium defendants at that early hearing that they all couldn't fit at the table. And he's right. They weren't the underdog. The prosecution was. So it's kind of interesting. I didn't think of that. Certainly that might be an advantage. You just don't know. I think that this is a fair jury if this campaign has not infected or seeped into the courtroom, which I'm afraid it has. We'll have a just verdict. But if not, we may get a really wonky, weird verdict.
She's got to have credibility, because when you pose a question to a witness, especially someone like Mrs. McCabe, who you're accusing of being involved in a conspiracy, some of the answers to those questions are going to be flat no's.
Yeah.
And then what you're hoping for as a cross-examiner is that if you built up your credibility with the jurors, they'll believe the real answer was yes. Even though the judge will instruct them to do the opposite, your hope is that they'll believe you, the questioner, the cross-examiner, over the witness. And if you have no credibility built up with the jurors, then that's not a realistic possibility.
Someone had asked me earlier to ask you, is there a way for a defense team, if you've lost credibility, to win it back? How hard is that to do?
I think it's impossible.
Impossible.
Wow. I think it's absolutely impossible. It's something that's so precious that you have to build brick by brick, and you can mess that up so easily. Because again, everybody understands that you're a hired gun. So you have to protect.
Eva says, can someone explain the discrepancy? This is interesting. We're going to get back to Mahoney saying that once you lose credibility, it's gone. And if that's true, if we can take anything from the whole courtroom erupting in laughter when that one witness said, I would believe John was 220 pounds and 6'1" or 2, I can't remember which. If Lally, the prosecutor, told me and not you, I wouldn't believe it if you told me that, when asked if he would believe that he was that height by Yannetti or Jackson, I can't remember which, and the whole courtroom erupted into laughter. That is a sign that maybe they've already lost credibility and it's not coming back. Eva asks, could someone explain the discrepancy with Jen saying Karen Reed showed her and Carrie the broken taillight at John's house, but Ring camera didn't show it? So my understanding, and I may be incorrect about this, is that it is Jennifer McCabe's memory that when they got out, that Karen Reed showed her the taillight, but perhaps the ring footage will show it right before they left John's. And I'm sure the defense will make much of that if that's the case. And if it's not on ring footage at all, then we're going to hear a lot of it. But of course, you know, she was tired, trauma, all those things, memory being elastic. Is it enough to exonerate Karen Reed? I don't think so, but we'll see.
That credibility with your life. You can't be seen doing crazy things in the courtroom and raising your voice and being all demonstrative and asking inane questions and harassing witnesses. So like there was some witness, I forget who it was, that Yannetti was cross-examining, and the witness sort of padded the answer with a couple of extra facts.
Yeah.
Yannetti just harshly went at the witness. You know, I didn't ask you that. You decided to add that information on your own, blah, 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 blah. I think that's a big turnoff. The better way to handle something like that is, and I've done this. You say to the witness, so you think it was important for the jury to know A, B, and C in addition to what I asked you. Is that correct? I say to the witness, okay, tell the jury that.
Okay.
Now you answered just my question. Would you do that for me? I mean, every good cross-examiner I've ever seen is also very conversational.
Right.
The question might be brutal, but the tone is always conversational, unless maybe it's a detective and somebody who's really giving you a lot of pushback. Then you step it up a bit. But
I'm just going to remove this for a second because it's getting a little glitchy. Hold on one sec.
For the most part, if you want the jury.
So that was Matt McCabe he was talking about. And I thought Matt McCabe did great up against Yannetti. Other people said the smiling was a little inappropriate, or I don't think it was as strong, but I think Matt McCabe had enough. He said it was 2 years of misery. Anyone remember his testimony? All these witnesses have been hunted, scared, imagine eating dinner and having to leave because you're scared for your life. And this includes the victim's family. They haven't had a minute of peace. They have these free Karen readers visiting the gravesite. This is not unusual. There's another case in Scotland, the Luke Mitchell case, where they went and visited the gravesite. Amanda Knox is always threatening to. I think they did. She and Solecito did. They just. It's about so much of these campaigns break down people's boundaries. and under the guise of, with the mask of saying we're justice warriors, terrorize people and attack people. And it's a tool to express their aggression and their disordered character.
Is to listen to. It's got to be conversational.
Especially if the people that are the witnesses are coming across as just regular everyday people, such as the paramedics, the firefighters, the police, and all the witnesses that were in the house have come across at this point as just regular people,
It would be one thing if they were cross-examining members of organized crime,
right?
People with criminal records. So I don't quite understand what they're doing here, and I've talked to other attorneys about it, and my opinion is shared by other people I respect.
How do most of the attorneys that you're talking to feel about this case? Are they buying into the conspiracy? There were attorneys on YouTube, plenty of them, that are buying into the conspiracy here.
None of my friends are buying into it. I've only talked to my friends, so I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other gentlemen are saying, but I think people who practice in this area, I don't know anybody who believes in this defense. Everybody I know seems to think it's kind of absurd.
Yeah, right. Interesting. I feel good hearing that, because you wonder too, like, are jurors vulnerable to some of the other things that regular human beings are, in terms of being susceptible to falling for conspiracy theories or not being able to think critically when it comes to
I love how he says it's like they're if they were members of organized crime. That's exactly what innocence fraud is, organized crime. And no one's calling it out. There's not one lawyer calling it out. What's going on? It's crazy.
to weighing evidence or taking a superficial weighing of the evidence. Is that something? I like to think that that's something that's somewhat rare in lawyers, or what do you think?
Let me say this. I think, again, it's hard to know whatever a jury is considers important. One of the challenges for the prosecution here is that what we appear to have in Karen Read is a complete psychopath who after running over her boyfriend, constructed her own alibi, apparently deleted ring videos, brought individuals, like Jennifer McCabe, to the scene as alibi witnesses. I mean, to do this, she has to be completely devoid of any conscience.
Yeah.
I mean, she has to be a complete sociopath, psychopath. So so the jury's got to, they don't necessarily have to buy all of that, but they have to buy the basic premise that she orchestrated her own alibi, which for most people is unthinkable. And she looks like other than when she's acting up, I mean, she looks like a professional level person. She had a professional level job.
Right. Like, we've never seen someone who looks like something. Alex Murdaugh looked like a professional too. Anyone else? Oh, let's think of some others. Darlie Routier looked like a Texas mother, right? Housewife. We've had a lot of these that look like something, and the evidence says something else. She went out, she knew what she did, and she collected witnesses to report on her crime. I don't know. I wouldn't call them alibis exactly. And then she did a lot of hysterical acting that she couldn't really keep up. Yeah. Oh, look at OJ. Donna Adelson looks like a grandmother. We had grandmothers on trial. Yeah, I mean, if true crime tells you anything, don't judge a book by its cover, and or don't even judge a book by its public persona. If anything, does anyone remember that Madoff was the head of NASDAQ at one point, or credentials? And I say that for the same reason, that don't let these true crime people fool you, these experts fool you with their credentials, this appeal to authority. Our legal system is made so everyone can understand it. That's why we don't have, juries of 12 forensic specialists or ex-FBI people or even 12 lawyers. If you want to understand a case that's already been tried, go find the court transcripts. It's the most unbiased. You can read the defense side and the prosecution side. It's out there. But true crime media has gone a different direction in the, it's always existed, but this sort of fringe element has really become the norm, where every conviction is a wrongful conviction. The system gets it wrong all the time. Every confession is a false confession. Every cop is doing sloppy work or on the take or inside. I mean, it's something. Whatever the strongest piece of evidence is. And here it's the witnesses, so that now it's the witnesses are all lying. And it's also the forensics. The forensics can't be trusted. Sloppy investigation. I'm just surprised they haven't gone the sort of false confession route with Karen Reed. They've just said everyone misheard. Bad hearing. Everyone had bad hearing. Because Jen McCabe I thought her testimony was so good, very clear. It started out, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? To I hit him. And what are we at? 10 people heard her and more? Then she told her father, I hit something. What was that something you thought you hit? Why are you deleting ring video footage?
Yeah. She comes across in a nice manner. So are they really going to conclude that she's crazy enough to behave in this manner? And of course, the other alternative is, 10, 20, 50 people involved in a conspiracy when there doesn't seem to be any reason for it.
Right. What did you think about all the screaming? Does that possibly, like, she was, so we're going to hear from Denise that she was screaming in the house that morning and that woke her up. Then she's screaming, we've already heard, when she called Jen. We're going to hear the same thing from Kerry Roberts.
Yeah, and she seemed to be able to calm down. She'd be able to turn off that screaming and hysteria very quickly at will. I'm not believing that she was so intoxicated that she didn't know what she was doing, or she was in some kind of panic or hysterical. I believe she went and she put on a show for everyone. And she was very happy to get to the hospital. A much nicer place than under the hot lights and being interrogated.
We've already heard the 911 audio and she's screaming in that too. Was that part of an act, or was there some kind of legitimate psychotic breakdown going down here?
It's hard to know. I mean, if she had retained me, one of the first things I would have done is had her evaluated. Mm-hmm. Because I would want to know whether or not she was actually criminally responsible.
Isn't that interesting? He's like, I would have just tried to prove that she was not criminally responsible by means of insanity right away. Almost like the route that Karen Reed took herself, getting herself to the hospital. Almost like that route, acting crazy. Is this period blood? They're going to talk about that in a second. Almost like that route. trying to get out of immediately, try to pass the buck on to her poor mental state. And then when she gets her first hearing, we heard about the brain tumor we never heard about again. All her illnesses, they've already played the illness and sympathy card already in court. We've already heard about her MS. So isn't it funny that Mahoney's like, yeah, he's already admitted she's a psychopath who can think on her feet, who's very calculating and clever, and would do just what a defense attorney would do. Plead mental illness and try to act crazy at the scene, running around.
Responsible. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the statements that Jennifer McCabe testified to, for example, was I having my period?
Right.
I'm asked if am I having my period, would suggest that she was not actually
Jen, how does my period work? Does my period just come out of my eyeballs? Does it come out of my nose? I'm not sure. I'm a middle-aged woman, but I'm not sure how my period works. Did I have my... I mean, what's going on? What's going on, Karen Reed?
possibly not responsible for her actions because of her psychological state. So I would have had it evaluated.
Right.
And then
Yeah, I was. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
based on the report that I got from the psychologist.
Mhm. I was just happened to be reading on a something separate from this case. This were diaries from World War II, people that soldiers that fought in extremely shell shock situations on the Pacific Front. And one of the things that would come up that was common for people that were shell shocked, and sometimes these were people that had for weeks or even months had been some of the better survivors but eventually you have this breakdown. And one of the common things that happens is they start screaming uncontrollably. And I just seeing that thinking, was there some kind of a breakdown here? But again,
I think Karen Reed has that same book. Was it a book or was it a movie? I think Karen Reed has either read that same book or seen that same movie, Kevin. This is imitation. We know she doesn't have any real feelings. Had she been really traumatized, she would not be sitting in court with a 50-yard death stare. All right? Can we talk about that? She wasn't overcome with emotion. If you're the type of personality, who's overcome with emotion, you don't this would all be emotional. Court would be emotional. We'd see some trace of it. So stop making, I know it's dark. I know this case is dark. I know it's dark to look down the dark chasm of the soulless Karen Reed, but that's where it is. No one who would be so emotional would be okay with attacking. Remember, this is her boyfriend, her boyfriend's family, people who treated her like family. Totally okay with going after them, going after innocent people, which she's already saying is the worst thing. What's done to me is the worst thing, being wrongly accused. But I'll go ahead and wrongly accuse everyone. And how does she know who did it? And she's sitting on the steps going, we know who did it. Do we? Because you've changed suspects a zillion times. Is it Chloe the dog? Is it Colin Albert? Is it Brian Albert? Is it Jen McCabe? I think that's where we're at now. I think I'm trying to keep up, guys. What do we know, Karen Reed and Karen Reed supporters? And then when you say that, they go, well, we don't have to say. It's up to you. It's up to the prosecution. It's like I know you are, but what am I game? It goes round and round and round and round. Never stops. Purposeful confusion. Just keep it like a game of 3-card Monte. Like, just keep it going. Just keep it going. Just keep the confusion going. Sounds good. Just not Karen Reed. It's how this is the way the innocence fraud game works. Keep the pieces moving. Keep the cup moving. And always attack. Always attack. Never really defend your position. Remember when Kevin had a debate and no one showed up? There's no discussion. There's no, let me explain why I think Karen Reed is innocent. Let me explain from beginning to end. Everyone on this side of the fence will do it till we're blue in the face. We'll start at the beginning. We'll go all the way to the end. That's not what it's about. No one on that side is willing to talk from beginning to end, tell you how it is, discuss the real evidence and record with you. And that is not unique to this case. It's in every case that I've discussed. The supporters of the accused or the convicted, I've invited so many of them on. They never want to show up. Even when they've contacted me, when their PR agent has contacted me first, said, oh, I have this great guest. They've written a book about so-and-so's innocence. Great, have them on. You never hear it. It's like radio silence forever again.
Yeah, basically, that you're making a very good point. But again, as a defense attorney, what you want to do with when you have a client in that kind of condition is you also want to spend a lot of time with her.
Yeah.
And you want to ask her a lot of questions, and then you want to evaluate how she's answering you, so that you get a sense as to whether or not she's okay.
Right.
Other thing is, with regard to speaking with a client and asking questions, it's obvious to me that at least early on, and maybe much later, that Yannetti believes that his client is actually innocent.
Mm-hmm.
You got to spend a lot of time with your client, and you got to earn your client's trust. And you got to get that client to open up to you and tell you the truth, so that you don't make mistakes.
Right.
I can't make mistakes early in a case. I can't do it. I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to make it. I don't want to do anything that I'm not going to be able to correct later on. And I certainly don't want to find out the truth of the trial.
Right. So he's talking about those terrible crosses, like the crosses of one of the paramedics where Yannetti, oh no, it was Jackson, asked him, well, you didn't ask anyone. Yeah, you didn't tell anyone at the hospital that Karen Reed, said, I hit him. He's like, actually, I did. That was a terrible moment for Jackson. But now we've gone into Mahoney from him being shocked and dismayed at the way that this defense team is operating, to now giving tips as to how it could be better. And now he just seems disappointed that they might lose, that this might have been a winning case, and that now he's showing off how he could do it better. I could have gotten this guilty person off if I had talked to them and known all the stuff that they were going to say, and really, really known what the whole witness's story.
I don't want to find out the truth then. I'm not I don't tell my clients, if you tell me you're guilty, though, we're just going to fold up the tent and go home.
Right.
There may be ways to defend the client.
Right. Right.
I don't want to make mistakes that end up making the client's situation worse rather than better.
Because you were taken by surprise because she didn't tell you everything.
Correct. And so then when you think about what Alan Jackson and David Yannetti have done by exposing her to in media interviews.
I was just going to ask you that next. You read my mind. Go ahead.
That was malpractice.
Yeah.
That was malpractice. Again, let's say for the sake of argument that she conducted herself perfectly in any of these interviews, right? And yeah, maybe these interviews are being played on national TV and maybe the jurors are being exposed to it. Okay, that's all possible. But at the trial, it's really up to the prosecutor as to whether or not he considers them inculpatory and therefore worth introducing. Defense is not going to be able to get that in.
Yeah.
Those interviews are not coming in over the objection of Lally. So, but she performed so poorly during those interviews that if I'm Lally, I absolutely have to play them.
I'm hearing that unfortunately most of them are not.
Yeah, they're all coming in. They're all coming in. That was that Friday hearing. What is Kevin disagreeing with me? That I heard they were all coming in.
Not going to be entered because ABC didn't turn theirs over. So I'm not sure which ones they have. I know they will be using the one from Boston Magazine, reporter Gretchen Voss. That's an audio. I'm not, there was the one she did on the court. They had a press conference on the courthouse steps for one of the hearings this summer. But then obviously the biggest one, if they could have got it in, was the 2020. I think it was 2020 interview or one of the other. It was ABC News. And I think they tried to get it and ABC fought it. So my thinking of this, trying to think it without, like, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, Kevin. So because it's edited, because ABC does, maybe let's say they do an hour or two's worth of footage, but then it's edited what they put in. If you don't get the whole footage because it's edited, is that why it's inadmissible?
The defense would argue, if the defense wanted to keep it out, they would argue that these statements are being taken out of context,
right?
For X, Y, and Z, and they can't come in. And there is a doctrine of completeness. So
there you go.
And let me say one thing in defense of Judge Cannoni, who I know is catching a lot of grief from the Karen Reed supporters, and claims that her rulings are designed to sabotage the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Cannoni has given them a wider berth to conduct their defense than I've ever seen. Maybe going all the way back to O.J. Simpson with Judge Ito.
Wow.
The latitude that she has allowed those defense attorneys.
I agree. It's nuts. It's nuts. Can you answer that question? And I would argue that this campaign has gone, and it's so disgusting. They call a judge Aunt Bev. She's not your aunt. She's a judge. It's a position of honor in our society. So degrading. It drives me crazy. But she's a very defense-friendly judge, and I think she's bent over backwards. And the defense knows that they can walk all over, and they do. And they get admonished privately, and then they go back and they do it all over again. And they know, these lawyers know that they're never going to get in trouble. Nothing's ever going to happen. They're never so much as going to get an admonishment from their peers for doing this. Let alone anything connected to their law license. And so one bad behavior, another lawyer sees that and sees what they get away with, and we'll keep pushing the line. And pretty soon we have a kangaroo court. All kangaroo courts all over the country. Because somewhere we got to pull back the reins. Because this is all this movement. This movement is, whether it's happening before trial or after conviction, is eroding our justice system. And once that falls, that's it, guys. There goes we talk about the rule of law. There goes the rule of law. And this guy's talking about it like it's strategy, like, oh, it's a losing strategy, what they got here. No, it's an innocent fraud campaign that's I feel is not only evil, but incredibly destructive. And all these lawyers know what's going on. I talk to them behind the scenes. They all know what's up. They'll talk to me about the Darlie Routier case. They'll talk to me about the Julius Jones case. They'll talk to me about the Rodney Reed case. Isn't it incredible what these lawyers are doing? And no one is saying anything publicly. Not one person, not one lawyer. And it's their profession.
Both in arguments and cross-examination.
You know, if we had a baseball team where half the players were cheating, right? The other baseball players would never stop screaming about it. But instead, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Examination. She's given them more latitude by a factor of 10 than I think I've ever seen. So the idea that she's been trying to sabotage the defense is absolutely baseless. Other judges would have kept those attorneys on a very tight leash. Very tight. It would have allowed them to go into a lot of the stuff with regard to, what was the girl's name? Katie McLaughlin?
Yeah.
In a relationship with the Albert girl. What was the Albert girl's name? Caitlin?
Caitlin, yeah.
Okay. The vast majority of judges would not have permitted the defense to go into any of that. Because it's completely baseless. The idea that Katie McLaughlin lied about what she heard Karen Reed saying when all the other witnesses say that heard the same thing, and that she was lying because she was on the track team or something with Caitlin 10 years ago is absolutely absurd. The vast majority of judges would have shut that down immediately. Judge Canoni has given the defense every opportunity to put forward their defense. Every opportunity.
Now, have you done cases yourself before with Judge Canoni?
Yes.
So is this unusual for her? Is it because of the media spotlight? Why is she kind of going the extra mile in this case? I know she has a reputation of being someone that defense lawyers like anyways, but why is she going more in this case?
I have not done a trial. I've done hearings in front of Judge Canoni. I've not done a trial in front of Judge Canoni. Most judges are considered by the defense to be pro-prosecution. I think most defense attorneys would characterize Judge Canoni as neutral to maybe slightly leaning in favor of the defense, but only slightly.
That's what I've been saying all along. I've been saying, who said it first? She's a defense-friendly judge. She has that reputation. And the Free Karen readers have made an enemy out of everyone. Everyone but Karen Reed is terrible. Do you notice that? Everyone but Karen Reed and Karen Reed's witnesses are terrible. Do you notice a pattern? Anyone who's not going to write favorably about Karen Reed, every YouTuber, et cetera, we're all terrible. Everyone's lying but Karen Reed and Karen Reed's flying monkeys.
I think that, but compared to everybody else, I mean, she's far better for the
right. I want to talk about the feds. This is just you must be blown away by what's going on with the feds here and their involvement in this case, the predication of it, the release of the grand jury minutes to be used here, obtaining the communications of everybody that was tangentially connected to the conspiracy theory, from Courtney Proctor to Julie Albert, who wasn't in the house. Let's talk about the feds. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't want to disclose sources, but I knew about the Fed involvement quite a bit before it became news to everybody else. I think it was unprecedented to have this investigation going on during the maybe not the trial, but certainly the prosecution of a murder case.
Mm-hmm.
I am stunned that the feds went to put in the time and the resources to try to uncover this, to unmask this conspiracy, because you would have thought that maybe after just a few witnesses, they would have said that this is ridiculous and they would have shut it down.
Yeah.
Why didn't they shut it down when they figured out that there's nothing here?
Right.
Why did they keep it going? In fact, why are they keeping it going now? Because technically they haven't ended the investigation. Technically, it's still open.
Yeah.
Which is not atypical of a prosecutor. The prosecutor doesn't say, well, we're never going to charge your client with the case, the criminal conduct, blah, blah, blah. They just simply say that it's ongoing and you never hear from them again.
Right.
Maybe it may be one of that type of normal prosecutorial conduct, but for purposes when they know that there's no conspiracy and they know that the public perception is that there must be something because the feds are keeping the investigation open. For that reason alone, I don't understand why Josh Levy hasn't announced that the investigation found nothing and that the investigation has therefore been closed. That's what he should be doing.
What about the strange coordination between Josh Levy and the defense team?
Somebody's well connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to some questions that other people have, if you don't mind hanging with us for a little, Kev. One more thing on the feds. My understanding is that don't.
So he's not going to talk about the abuse of the feds either. That Karen Reed got that federal investigation going just to make it look like something sus was going on, just like she got the internal investigation going on for Michael Proctor, just to make it look like he was doing something nefarious. And it's amazing because every single one of these defense lawyers always accuse the detective or the investigator of doing something wrong. Often it works. They tend to go after people really good at their job. And if they can get them on one case and then another, then they've created a pattern practice of a detective falsely accusing people or having tunnel vision. So he knew about the investigation, and again, he said nothing. He knew it was wrong, and as it was going on, and said nothing.
They can request these communications. They don't actually need subpoenas. So this is, and I could be wrong on this. This is just my understanding. So you please correct me if I am. But this is why they're able to get this for so many different people without having to make the case in a subpoena that has to be approved. So there's no accountability. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think what people don't realize is that for a lot of these social media companies, some of the at least from what I understand, I may be incorrect about this, but it's my understanding that there was some seed money involved from the federal government, and that in order to also maintain the liberty to conduct their companies the way they want, they have to provide law enforcement with back doors.
Yeah,
and
that's the problem. Yeah,
cooperation. So it's very unnerving that the government has that access.
And it's probably cheaper for these companies to just hand over the information than to try to get involved with their legal departments trying to fight it, right? So there's just, and like you said, they have just so many incentives to want to make the federal government happy, even potentially for corrupt reasons, But is this something that we need to address in terms of congressionally, to dial some of this back? It seems ridiculous. The amount of, just from a civil rights perspective, the amount of information that they can get without any kind of a true subpoena.
And there are so many requests from so many different prosecutors and so many different courts that you have to anticipate that there's probably almost no supervision over what they release.
Mm-hmm.
Because because how could they devote the time necessary to examine each request?
Right.
So they probably just provide whatever law enforcement is asking for. No questions asked.
And then there's no accountability where afterwards you can go and look and see, all right, what argument did you make for getting Caitlin Alberts or Julie Alberts or Courtney Proctor's messages? You should. That's a part of accountability, right? You should be able to go back and find out what was the argument that you made for getting these. It can't just be, I think we want them. You know, there has to be an actual argument, right? Or there should be.
I think it's going to vary based on each law enforcement, that the protocols that each one follows and requesting documents, and then each Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, are going to have their own policies. But what I would expect is that all you have to do is touch the bases.
Yeah.
You don't have to provide anything of any substance unless your request is somehow well outside of the normal request.
Right. Okay. All right. Let me get to some questions that other people have. Frank Perry says, I feel like the sidebars Yannetti and Jackson are asking the judge for help us. I'm reading it. That might have been mistyped, but she killed someone she loved. What do you think she will do to us? I don't know. That was kind of a hard one to follow, but
with regard to the sidebars, I've never had a trial with 1/10 as many sidebars.
Okay.
It's extremely frustrating for the jurors in even just trying to watch it. It's I just never seen that many. I've never had that many sidebars.
If you watch the Durst trial, that has at least as many sidebars, if not more. Yes, shout out to anyone watching the Jinx too. I'm loving it because, of course, I enjoyed that trial. It's an extremely long, intricate, involved trial. And of course, and it has John Lewin as the main prosecutor. So of course I'm going to love it. And really enjoying the Jinx Part 2 on HBO. But that trial had that many sidebars, if not more.
How much is Judge Canoni responsible for that?
A judge is responsible for allowing the defendant or the defense counsel on behalf of the defendant to fully cross-examine a witness. And at the same time, the judge is also responsible for not letting defense counsel to unduly harass a witness. At the same time, she's also got to maintain a schedule for the trial so that the trial doesn't drag out indefinitely and inconvenience the jurors unnecessarily. So she's got, and then the other thing is she also wants to protect the record from appeal.
Right.
She is, I'm guessing, I don't know what she's doing specifically, but my overall impression is that she wants to make sure that the defense has no appellate grounds whatsoever.
Right. Right. So she's, out of an abundance of caution, doesn't want to throw out any exhibits. A lot of these sidebars seem to involve exhibits that they're trying to get in, images of the text exchange or pictures, videos, things like that. Some of it seems technical, like it should have been properly ordered out. A lot of this stuff seems like maybe it's stuff that was not put into the evidentiary record before the trial.
I know from a final trial conference I had in front of Canoni last fall that she wanted all our exhibits agreed to and in order and pre-marked 2 weeks prior to the trial because she wanted that trial to be efficient. So I would imagine that she was trying to do the same thing with these attorneys and try to make sure that everything went as efficiently as possible.
And so what happens when a defense attorney wants to get in those exhibits during the trial?
There's an objection and then there's a sidebar and
Yeah, excuse me, Your Honor. We have 57 other pictures from Facebook that we have to show here. Excuse me, Your Honor. Our witness went to the same manicurist as the Alberts. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Call it the Facebook defense. Yeah. So, I have no doubt that Kevin J. Mahoney, I really enjoyed his last blog on this, but I have no doubt that he knows how damaging, how feral, how ferocious, how damaging, how re-victimizing, traumatizing this Karen Reed campaign, and how it really destroys the integrity of our justice system. I'm sure he knows all about it. I'm sure he knows all about the wrongful conviction movement and all their tricks. And is not brave enough to talk about it like all the lawyers that I talk to. Like so many, let me put it this way, like so many of the lawyers that I talk to behind the scenes, over drinks, they all know about it and no one's calling it out. They all see it happen, and they may be, they may be the next victim, or you may be the next victim. You may be a witness in a case next. And people may be outside your doorstep, or it may be your loved one. So these, like I said, these wrongful conviction or wrongly accused narratives are really like catnip to cats, and the American public cannot get enough of them. And my frustration is why is it only me and a handful of other people? I can really call it out on one hand. Me, Innocence Fraud Watch, Martin Pribe. Why are we the only people talking about this? And I've said it before, I believe that this is the biggest fraud in America that no one is talking about. And Netflix was considering doing a quote unquote, I would call it a mockumentary, more like Spinal Tap, but a documentary about free Karen Reed and her being framed. They wisely demurred. But we know that the head of Netflix wife has given a lot of money to these DAs, meaning these district attorneys who are defense attorneys who are running as district attorneys. So what happens when that happens? We just have two defense attorneys talking to each other in court, meaning one defense attorney and one prosecutor in name only, meaning two lawyers whose total interest is with the accused, and no one there representing the public and no one there representing the victim. And this movement is creating kangaroo courts all over the country. So that's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about Kevin J. Mahoney's interview. And I'll be back tomorrow. I'm off, but I'll be back Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody.